So Kino's Journey episode 5 I think is easily my favorite episode of the series, hands down. For the most part, I thought the first episode was the best of the new series. I felt like they just started out with a bang and then kind of went a little downhill slightly. I still enjoyed all these episodes, but it's really this episode that kind of takes top spot for me right now. And the Country of Liars was so interesting. Even more interesting is we actually kind of got two stories in one this time. The first is a little mini story with Kino stopping off on her last day, and we get to see this kind of like traveler who's kind of being idolized in a lot of ways, and all of his little individual stuffs are being like, they kind of been turned into monuments and things like that, but obviously it's all kind of BS because a lot of the stuff is souvenirs and just kind of junk. But the Motorrad stuff was actually fairly interesting because there is this guy's Motorrad that's basically been pinned up as a display object, and this motorcycle just either wants to be ridden away or be killed pretty much, but that's not Kino's way because Kino isn't someone who would interfere with another country's way of life. She will help them, and if they attack her, obviously she'll defend herself, but she can't like kind of free this Motorrad, even as sad as it is. But I do like what she ultimately does is she gives this child a dream to become a traveler. So hopefully in the future, this kid will essentially use that Motorrad and bring it on adventures so he doesn't have to die in just a kind of glorified monument in a lot of ways. But I thought that was going to be the Country of Liars because the way they started the episode out, because they were saying like how, oh, look at all these amazing things our traveler had, but Kino and Hermes are kind of like, this isn't anything. This, like, they're just making up BS in a lot of ways. But when you see what actually the Country of Liars was, this was actually fairly sad at times, and they bamboozled me 3 times. Because when it first starts out, you see this guy running saying like, have you seen my lover? And then you get the confirmation of what ultimately happened to this country, where essentially they started a revolution. They started a revolution and overthrew the leaders of this country, and ultimately their hero threw a grenade and blew up the car with the princess and the king and the queen, all the leaders of this. But what he didn't know was one of the people that he blew up was the princess that he fell in love with, who he thought was just a farmer's daughter. And you're just like, okay, that makes sense why this guy is so broken. And then you see how his mentality kind of shattered and he started believing that he didn't kill him. And it's just this entire sad story. But then when you see his housekeeper, and then essentially she tells him, I'm actually the princess, and I fled the country before all that happened, but I came back because I couldn't stop loving this man, and how she's living a life in lies, but this is what she wants because she gets to be by the side of the man that she loves, even though he's hurting that he can't see his lost love. It's just this very heartbreaking, but also kind of bittersweet story. And when I was watching and these conversations was happening, I was like, man, this is a very, in a way, depressing story, but it's also very sweet in its own way because of how far she's willing to take this lie so she gets to be by the side of the man that she loves. It won't put him in danger, won't put her in danger, and it's so sweet. But then when the ending comes around, they bamboozle us again, and then he reveals that he's also lying, and he's keeping up the lie so he can be by her side. And the fact that they were able to do 3 bamboozles here, I just like, okay, Kino's Journey, you're definitely getting back on track of being like hit after hit, because I enjoyed the past episodes, like episodes 2, 3, and 4, but they weren't to the same quality, I thought, as the first country where murder was legal, and this was just such an engaging episode. I really felt for these characters, and that's kind of like the big thing with it, is you really gotta give the viewer an understanding of the country, why the country's acting the way they are. You don't have to make the viewer connect with the individual people, but you really gotta give the countries more time to feel alive, and even though we had basically 2 stories in one, granted the first one was only a few minutes, it still gave enough time for this country, the Country of Liars, to feel important. We got their history, why it was overthrown, things like that, and by the time Kino left that and we got the confirmation that this guy was also lying, it was like for the first time I'm like, I'm glad everyone in this country is seemingly lying because everything gets to remain happily ever after, just in a kind of twisted way, and that was very interesting to me. I really enjoyed this week's episode. Granted, not everyone may enjoy it as much as myself. Maybe some people thought this was a boring episode, but I love the interactions. I love how all the lies are kind of connected. The lies of the people seemingly lying to the man who is mentally unstable so that their new government can function. The housekeeper lying that she's actually not just a housekeeper, but actually his lover, and then him lying that he's mentally unstable. It's just such an interesting web of lies. And for the first time, you're happy all these lies are happening because it makes the country function without throwing it into disarray. This was a great episode of Kino's Journey. I'm really interested to see how episodes going forward. I don't expect I'll see an episode in the near future that's going to top this based on the fact that episode 1 was my favorite episode of the series for the new series, and then it took a few weeks for an episode to top it. But I'm very excited to see what the new stories of Kino's Journey are going to take us for the remainder of this season, because this was a very engaging episode, and I really like the characters that we got introduced to. It really made this Country of Liars feel alive. and I can't wait to see what they're gonna do going forward. But let me know your thoughts. What did you think of the Country of Liars? Or are you like me, this was one of your favorite episodes? Or did you find this to be a little boring for yourself? Let me know your thoughts, and before you leave, smack that like button to show your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.